Has Syracuse basketball won or lost in the transfer portal so far?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day in the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we're talking about if Syracuse basketball so far, because it's still May 20th at the time of this recording, have they won or have they lost in the transfer portal? And in my opinion, they have won, but only by a smidge so far for a couple of reasons. The quality of players that they've brought in over the quantity that they've lost, and the quantity of those players that they lost, were they really even that good? So we're going over Syracuse basketball so far, their progress in the transfer portal. So On3 currently ranks Syracuse basketball as having the 41st best transfer portal class in the country. And this ranking accounts for the guys that they brought in and the guys that they departed, and whether or not Syracuse, based on what they've done in the transfer portal, have they gotten better. And to recap, they have so far brought in 3 players, those being Eddie Lampkin, Jyare Davis, and Jaquan Carlos, and they have lost 7 players in the transfer portal: Maliq Brown, Quadir Copeland, Benny Williams, Justin Taylor, Peter Carey, Munir Hema, and William Patterson. So they've lost basically an entire rotation's worth of players in the portal. But as I'm going to say later on, the net loss of those guys isn't really that bad. But first, Syracuse basketball has slightly won the transfer portal so far because of the quality players that they have brought in. They've only brought in 3, but the quality of them is pretty good. On3 says that the average impact of the 3 players they brought in has a score of a 90. So I believe they do their scale on a 0 to a 100. So a 90 is pretty good. It's not the greatest. It's pretty good. And the 3 players they brought in average out to about a 90. The 7 players that they lost, their average is way lower. It's down at 75. So that means that while they've lost a lot, the quality of players they brought in is a little bit greater. So the 3 players that they brought in, once again, Eddie Lampkin, a 6'11" center. He is a 4-star transfer from Colorado. Last year, he averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds per game. And he brings Syracuse a true starting caliber center in the Power 5. He is not the greatest in the world, and I know a lot of people are skeptical whether or not he's going to decommit or not, but for now, I'm assuming that he is on the roster and that he will be playing for Syracuse next season. He's a decent player, a solid center. He was one of the first players in the portal to actually commit. He was the first player to commit to Syracuse, but in terms of the overall class, he committed pretty early. So Eddie Lampkin was the first player they brought in. Then they brought in Jyare Davis, a 6'7" forward, 4-star from Delaware. And last year, he averaged 17 points and 8 rebounds per game. He was highly efficient from 2-point range. He can't shoot the 3 ball for a lick, but that's okay. He gives Syracuse another player that can create their own shot off the dribble. They need more players that if you give them the ball, they can go get a bucket. Jyare Davis is exactly that. He also is a solid rebounder, given that he averaged 8 rebounds a game last season. And he does have tournament experience. He did score as a freshman 17 points against Villanova in the first round. Delaware did lose that game because, well, they were going against Villanova. They probably weren't going to win, but Jyare Davis played pretty well in that game. And the third player that Syracuse basketball has brought in the transfer portal is Jaquan Carlos, this 6', 4-star guard from Hofstra, point guard, I should say. He averaged 10 points and 6 assists last season, which led the conference, and he brings Syracuse a true floor general. He's not someone that's going to light up the stat sheet on his points. He's an okay three-point shooter at 34%, but he's a great passer. He might be the best passer on the team right now. In fact, the two best passers on the team are probably Jaquan Carlos and Eddie Lampkin, two transfers that they just brought in. He once had 19 assists, Jaquan Carlos, I should say, because I mentioned Eddie Lampkin. But Jaquan Carlos once had 19 assists in a game, and that came against Northeastern this past season. I mean, 19 assists. I mean, we hear about players dropping 25, 30, 40 points even. 19 assists at Hofstra. That is highly, highly impressive, even if it was just one game. 19 of them is really, really strong. So the average impact of those three players that they brought in is a 90, which is pretty good. You got Eddie Lampkin. You got Jyare Davis. You got Jaquan Carlos. Solid quality. That is a solid 3 players. It's not the end-all be-all. I do think Syracuse basketball isn't done. They have 3 scholarship spots left. They shouldn't be done. And they are 41st right now in the transfer class. I believe last year they were actually in the top 30, but that was heavily skewed by J.J. Starling. But the quality of players they brought in is not the greatest, but it's pretty strong. It's not terrible. I'm not panicked about it. But they've lost a lot of guys. Syracuse basketball has lost 7 players, as I mentioned, in the transfer portal. That should mean they lost because they've only brought in 3. But I'm about to tell you, the impact of those 7 players they lost, as I kind of briefly mentioned off the top, the net of those players really isn't that bad. So Syracuse basketball, in my opinion, has won the transfer portal just by a smidge, and it can still get even better. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn is a tool that I use all the time to find the latest job opportunities. But LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's show, we're going over Syracuse basketball's transfer portal class so far and whether they have won or lost. On3 ranks them as having the 41st transfer portal class as of right now, and I say that they have won by a smidge. Just by a smidge. I don't think that Syracuse basketball is done, but if you were to tell me that the season starts tomorrow, I would say they have won by a smidge. Talked about earlier about the quality of players that they brought in, the 3 so far being Eddie Lampkin, Jyare Davis, and Jaquan Carlos. All could be starting next season. Except, I don't know. At some point, I should say, they all could start. You figure that Donnie Freeman's going to be the starting power forward, but who knows? Maybe Jyare Davis gets a starter or 2. Eddie Lampkin's going to be the starting center, and Jaquan Carlos, as of right now, in my opinion, is the starting point guard. You got 3 starting caliber players so far in the transfer portal. But now let's look at the 7 players that they've lost. And remember, Nobody else can enter the portal now, so it's done. 7 players. It's a lot, right? I know. But the average rating of those 7 players that they lost is a 75 compared to the 90 that it was of the players they brought in. So a 15-point gap right there. What does that mean? Well, it simply means the impact of the players they lost isn't that high. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The number one player by far is Maliq Brown, and he went off to Duke. He was an all-ACC defender last season. I believe he was the runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. Off the top of my head, I believe he was. And, it sucks that he left. I would rather have Maliq Brown over Jyare Davis. I'd rather have Maliq Brown over Eddie Lampkin, but I'll talk about that in a second. And I'd rather have Maliq Brown over Jaquan Carlos. The good news is that Maliq Brown's a power forward, and they have Donnie Freeman, who's the number 6 player in the country, coming in. So it's really not that big of a deal, but the transfer portal rankings doesn't account for freshmen coming in. So Maliq Brown sucks. That's a tough loss. But let's dive a little deeper. And I mentioned the thing about Eddie Lampkin. For the second half of last season, actually it was more than half of the season, Maliq Brown was asked to be the starting center. I personally would rather have Eddie Lampkin at center than Maliq Brown at center. Is that fair to say? I think Maliq Brown's a better player if you were to put Maliq Brown in the proper role. So what I'm trying to say is Maliq Brown at power forward is better than Eddie Lampkin at center. But if you try to switch the positions, I would rather have Eddie Lampkin at center over Maliq Brown. So I don't think it's that big of a deal that they lost Maliq Brown, but still he is the best player out of all the players they've lost and all the players they've gained in the transfer portal. Next up is Quadir Copeland. He's definitely number 2 of all the players they've lost. He went to McNeese State. He was the runner-up for ACC Sixth Man of the Year, and he should have won the award. I'll keep on saying it for the end of time. And with him, it's debatable in terms of where he ranks among the players they've won, or the players they've gained and the players they've lost. I have right now Maliq Brown as the number 1 player they've gained/lost. And then 2 through 5 is between Eddie Lampkin, Jyare Davis, Jaquan Carlos, and Quadir Copeland. So you can put Copeland as 2. You can also put Copeland at 5. I would hear your case on either one of them. And drop a comment below where you think Copeland ranks among those players. Once again, Eddie Lampkin, Jyare Davis, Jaquan Carlos, and Quadir Copeland. Where does Copeland rank among those 4? Right? But you see my point here. It's starting to kind of come together in terms of the net loss. Even if you have Quadir Copeland as slightly as the second best player, and I don't think he is, the next 3 are all Syracuse. All players that are coming to Syracuse. So the guys that they're losing in the transfer portal aren't really better than the players that they've brought in, except for Maliq Brown. That's it. The other players they've lost, Benny Williams, he's not better than anyone that they've brought in. Justin Taylor, he's not better than anyone they've brought in. Peter Carey, he's not better than anyone. Munir Hima, not better. William Patterson, not better than anyone they have brought in so far. The only 2 that you can argue, really it's the only one that you can argue, is Quadir Copeland. Where does he rank among them? Because Maliq Brown's 1. So overall, when I look at the net of the players that they have lost, and I look at the net players that they have gained 3 impactful players so far in the transfer portal. They've gained 3 impact, and they've lost 2 impactful players. Sure, it's nice. You'd want to have the bodies. But as I said, you brought in 3 players that I think all could start at some point in the season. At least they're starting caliber. And of the players they have lost, only 2, I would say, are starting caliber. Everyone else is probably best served coming off the bench. So even though Syracuse basketball has only brought in 3 and lost 7. I still think, based on the quality of players they've brought in and the net loss of the players they've obviously let go, that they have won the transfer portal as of May 20th by a smidge. By a smidge. They have won it. They're 41st overall in the country. That's not bad. Don't get that confused with the commit class, which I talked about a couple weeks ago. That factors in the freshmen coming in, Donnie Freeman and Elijah Moore. Just looking at the transfer portal, they're 41st. It's not bad, but it can still get better. They can still make a better transfer portal class. And coming up, we're going to talk about that. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. I've been using Yahoo Finance. Our sponsor today, I have an investment account with Schwab and a 401k with Fidelity, and I've been using Yahoo Finance to consolidate them in one place, which has made it incredibly easy to manage them. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or are looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They are the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's show, we have gone over Syracuse Basketball's 41st overall transfer portal class in the country, and whether or not I think Syracuse has won or lost in the portal alone, just the transfer portal. And as of May 20th, and there's still plenty of time, I say they have won it by a smidge. Only a smidge, but still, it's really, really solid, a foundation that they have built so far, because the 3 players that they've brought in, I think, are a higher quality than the 7 players that they have lost, right? We talked about earlier how if you were to rank the 5 best transfers that they have gained or lost, 3 of those players are guys that they've added. So Eddie Lampkin, Jaquan Carlos, Jyare Davis, and Quadir Copeland, really. I mean, you rank those 4 because that's the debate right there. Where does Quadir Copeland rank among those 4 players? Because Maliq Brown's 1, but overall, that's still 3 impactful players versus 2 impactful players. But I still think, and I think most of us would all agree, that this transfer portal class could really improve. They can use more. They have the room to do it. They have 3 open scholarships left. Coach Alan Griffin said on the No Destination podcast to get your popcorn ready. I'd imagine that Syracuse right now is not resting on their laurels and that they're still working hard to improve the roster. It's not perfect. I think they've done well so far this offseason. I gave them a B. And in the transfer portal, I say they've won it by a smidge, but it can still improve. They went after Quadir Richmond. He would have been great. He was a perfect fit. He was at Syracuse a few years ago. Obviously a big fish. And they missed out on him. They didn't get him. That's okay. You move on. But that signals to me, yeah, they missed out, but it signals to me that, hey, they're still looking. They're still going out there, and if the right opportunity presents itself, they're going to make an effort to go get someone in the transfer portal. to fill up those final 3 spots. Because that's the only way they can really improve the team now is through the transfer portal. Class of 2024, all the excellent players are pretty much taken at this point. They should be. I believe Connie Roos was like the last like big name available, and he committed to Louisville. So they're pretty much done with the class of 2024, and the class of 2025 cannot help them for this year. So you're looking at just the transfer portal. In terms of how it could be better, well, there's a few ways they can do it. For starters, they can just get an elite player. They can get an elite player. Guys like Jameer Watkins, Cam Christie, Cedric Howard. There are 14 players left in the top 100. You get one of those guys, you're instantly better. In fact, it would be a bonus if you can get someone that's even ranked higher than Maliq Brown. Maliq Brown was, I believe, inside the top 70. Maybe you find someone even better than that. That would really mean that Syracuse is won in the transfer portal. You get one player that's better than Maliq Brown, like the guys that I mentioned. Hey, pretty good. The other way they can do it is, look, they can just look at solving their needs, which might be the best thing that they could do, honestly. Solving the team needs rather than going after that sexy splash that may or may not fit. You do need someone who can score from the guard position. And Ken Evans Jr. is a name that's been thrown around. And I know that Syracuse has made contact with him. They have. We had on Mike McAllister, who said that they have reached out to him. And that was about it. They went after Quadir Richmond, who became available after Ken Evans. So perhaps that's why something stopped with that. But Ken Evans Jr. is still available in the transfer portal right now, and he would be an excellent fit. He shot 39% from 3 last year at Jackson State. We know that Syracuse can still use some shooting. So why not? You bring in a guy like Ken Evans, transfer portal class, instantly improved, right? I think you would get inside the top. You get inside the top 40, you'd move up, but you probably even get inside the top 35. You bring in a guy like Ken Evans Jr. The other ways you can do it, well, depth. They need bodies. They lost 7 players. They still have 3 remaining. Or they have 3 that came in. And you still have 3 open scholarships. Depth. They could use a third-string center. Someone who can play the Munir Hema, Peter Carey role. It doesn't have to be an elite player. I just said Munir Hema or Peter Carey type player. Maybe you can convince William Patterson to come back because he hasn't yet transferred. He would be a solid third-string center. But I imagine he entered the portal for a reason. Maybe you can convince him to come back and be a third-string center. And then just more depth. Depth wing player, right? You only have one true small forward on the team. Kind of. You have a mix of 4 forwards. Or 3 forwards, I should say. You have Chris Bell, Jyare Davis, and Donnie Freeman. You can use another depth there. In fact, I think Syracuse can go 3 depth players, no huge home runs, and that would improve their team. It would. So they don't necessarily need the sexy splash, big fish, everything like that. It would be great, but they don't need it. Overall, I like where they're at right now. They've built a solid foundation. And it's still May 20th. I don't think there's really reason to panic just yet about Syracuse this offseason because most of you guys think that they've improved the roster anyway. So, still plenty of time. Now, coming up, hopefully we can have a guest on this week. I know I haven't had a guest on the podcast in a while. My apologies on that. It's been a little bit hectic recently, but still pumping out these podcasts for you guys. And still, we're just going to await some news on whether or not Syracuse basketball can land their first recruit in 2025, whether they can get another player in the transfer portal. You'll know I'll be on top of it. So that is it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I'm dropping the next podcast. And guys, let's hope that Syracuse basketball can make some noise because there's still plenty of time to go this offseason.